The loneliest people at a billionaire party are usually the billionaire and the girl pouring the champagne. The soft hum of jazz drifted through the glass ballroom high above Manhattan, where crystal chandeliers painted gold across designer gowns and million-dollar smiles. Waiters moved like shadows between senators, actresses, and tech investors while cameras flashed every few seconds near the marble staircase. Chloe Bennett tightened her grip around a silver tray of champagne flutes and forced herself to keep smiling even as her feet throbbed inside cheap black heels she had glued back together that morning. "Table 12 needs another bottle," her manager hissed as he brushed past her. Chloe nodded quickly, lowering her eyes. That was the rule at events like these. Don't speak too much. Don't look too important. Just serve rich people and disappear. Across the ballroom, a group of women suddenly erupted into laughter near the center stage. Chloe glanced over and saw him instantly. Ethan Vale. Even she recognized him. America's favorite billionaire bachelor. Founder of Valex Technologies. 34. Worth almost $12 billion. The kind of man magazines called the most desired man in America. Women surrounded him in shimmering dresses, touching his arm, laughing too loudly at everything he said. But strangely, Ethan didn't look happy. He looked exhausted. Like a man trapped underwater smiling because people expected him to. "Careful, sweetheart." A sharp voice snapped Chloe out of her thoughts. A woman in diamonds stared at the tiny splash of champagne near her own shoe. Maybe catering should hire girls who know how to walk in heels. The women around her laughed softly. Chloe felt heat rise into her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's fine," the woman replied coldly. "Just don't embarrass yourself more than you already have." The words hit harder than Chloe expected, maybe because she had heard versions of them her entire life. Poor girls don't belong here. Poor girls should stay invisible. She turned quickly before anyone saw her eyes water and pushed through the ballroom doors into the empty rooftop garden above the hotel. Rain misted across the skyline while distant sirens echoed below the city lights. Chloe exhaled shakily and wrapped her arms around herself against the cold wind. "Rough night?" a voice asked quietly behind her. She turned fast. A man stood near the rooftop railing wearing a plain black coat with rain droplets clinging to his dark hair. No security. No expensive smile. No performance. Just tired eyes. Chloe assumed he was another hotel guest hiding from the party. "You could say that," she muttered. The stranger leaned against the railing beside her. "Let me guess. Someone rich said something stupid." Chloe laughed bitterly. "That narrows it down by about 300 people in there." For the first time all night, the man smiled. A real smile. Small. Honest. Fair point. Chloe studied him carefully. There was something calm about him. Like he understood exactly how exhausting the ballroom felt. "You know what the funny part is?" she said softly. "People like them think money makes them better than everyone else." The stranger looked down at the rain-soaked skyline. "What if I told you being rich can make you miserable too?" Chloe rolled her eyes. "Trust me, being nobody hurts more." Silence settled between them while the city glowed beneath the storm clouds. Then the man turned toward her fully. "And what if somebody saw you differently?" Chloe's heartbeat stumbled unexpectedly. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe the loneliness. Maybe the way he looked at her like she actually mattered. Before she could overthink it, she stepped closer and kissed him. Soft. Quick. Impulsive. The stranger froze in surprise just as the rooftop doors suddenly burst open behind them. "Mr. Vale," a panicked voice shouted. "The investors are waiting downstairs." Chloe's blood turned ice cold. The man beside her closed his eyes briefly as security guards rushed onto the rooftop. And in that terrifying moment, Chloe realized she had just kissed Ethan Vale. Chloe stepped backwards so fast her heel nearly slipped against the rain-soaked rooftop floor. Her pulse hammered violently in her ears as two security guards rushed toward Ethan Vale with panicked expressions. "Sir, the press is asking where you are," one of them said urgently while another held an umbrella over him. Ethan barely looked at them. His eyes stayed fixed on Chloe. Calm, almost apologetic. But Chloe could not breathe. 5 seconds ago, she thought he was just another exhausted stranger hiding from a party. Now she suddenly saw everything differently. The expensive watch beneath his coat sleeve. The quiet confidence in his voice. The way everybody moved the second he appeared. Oh God. She had kissed Ethan Vale. America's billionaire obsession. Chloe's stomach twisted hard with humiliation. I should go, she blurted out instantly. Ethan stepped forward. Wait. But Chloe shook her head quickly. No. No, this is insane. She turned and rushed past the security team before he could stop her. Behind her, she heard one of the guards ask carefully, "Should we follow her, sir?" Ethan answered immediately, "Absolutely not." Chloe practically ran through the hotel hallway, her cheap heels clicking unevenly against marble floors while laughter and music echoed from the ballroom below. The moment she reached the service elevator, she pressed the close button repeatedly like the building itself was chasing her. Her reflection stared back at her in the elevator mirror. Flushed cheeks, rain-soaked hair, smudged lipstick. She looked like a disaster. "What were you thinking?" she whispered to herself. But the worst part was not embarrassment. It was the fact that for a few minutes on that rooftop, she had actually felt seen. The next morning, Chloe woke up in her tiny Brooklyn apartment to 17 missed calls from her coworker Mia. Sunlight leaked through crooked blinds while the old radiator rattled loudly beside her bed. Her phone buzzed again. "Mia?" Chloe answered cautiously. "What? Please tell me you are not dead," Mia gasped dramatically. "Turn on the television right now." Chloe frowned and grabbed the remote from beside a pile of unpaid bills. The morning news instantly filled the screen. Billionaire Ethan Vale disappeared from his own charity gala for nearly 20 minutes last night, the anchor announced brightly. Rumors are already spreading online after an unknown woman was reportedly seen, leaving the private rooftop moments before Vale returned downstairs. Chloe's blood went cold. Then the screen flashed grainy paparazzi photos. Her silhouette, her dress, her face partially turned toward Ethan beneath the rain. "No, no, no," Chloe whispered. "Social media is losing its mind," Mia said excitedly through the phone. "People are literally calling you rooftop girl." Chloe muted the television immediately. Her chest tightened as thousands of online comments flashed across the screen. "Gold digger. Another attention seeker. Who is she?" Some comments were cruel enough to make her stomach ache. She threw the phone onto the couch and pressed both hands against her face. Meanwhile, across Manhattan, Ethan Vale sat silently inside the back seat of a black SUV while his assistant Olivia scrolled through headlines on her tablet. "Your public relations team wants a statement," she explained carefully. "Investors are nervous about the media frenzy." Ethan barely looked up from the lighter sitting in his hand. Small, silver, worn at the edges. Chloe must have dropped it on the rooftop. He turned it over slowly between his fingers. "No statement," he said quietly. Olivia blinked. "Sir." Ethan stared out the window at the crowded city streets. "Find the girl from last night." For the first time in years, Ethan Vale could not stop thinking about someone who wanted absolutely nothing from him. By noon, Chloe Bennett had become the most searched mystery woman in America. Her face was everywhere. News blogs, gossip channels, social media pages with millions of followers. Some people zoomed into blurry rooftop photos trying to identify her, while others invented stories about her out of thin air. Secret girlfriend, gold digger, actress chasing attention. Chloe sat frozen at the edge of her bed staring at her cracked phone while notifications exploded every second. Her tiny apartment suddenly felt even smaller, like the entire world was pressing against the walls. "This is exactly why rich men ruin lives," she muttered bitterly. Another message popped up from Mia. "Girl, there are reporters outside the jazz bar asking about you." Chloe immediately grabbed her coat. "Perfect," she whispered sarcastically. 40 minutes later, she pushed through the back entrance of Blue Harbor Jazz Lounge in Brooklyn, hoping nobody would notice her. The old club smelled like coffee, dust, and worn leather booths. Normally the place felt comforting. Tonight it felt dangerous. "You are late," the owner barked from behind the counter before lowering his voice. "And there are already 2 bloggers outside." Chloe closed her eyes briefly. "I am sorry. What exactly happened with Ethan Vale?" he asked carefully. Chloe shook her head fast. Nothing happened. But even saying the words made her think about the rooftop again. The rain. His voice. The way he looked at her before she kissed him. No cameras. No billionaire mask. Just a lonely man standing beside her in the dark. That memory frustrated her most of all because some reckless part of her still believed the moment had been real. "You need to stay low for a while," the owner warned. "People are curious." Chloe laughed humorlessly. "People are cruel." That night, while she sang softly beneath dim amber lights on the tiny jazz stage, Every pair of eyes in the room felt heavier than usual. She kept her focus on the microphone, trying to disappear into the music. Then halfway through the second song, the room suddenly grew quieter. Chloe glanced toward the back corner instinctively, and her heart nearly stopped. Ethan Vale sat alone in the darkest booth near the wall. No security guards, no expensive suit, just a charcoal sweater and tired eyes fixed entirely on her. Chloe missed the next lyric. A few customers noticed him instantly and started whispering among themselves. Phones slowly lifted beneath tables. Ethan ignored all of it. He only watched Chloe sing. The song ended under awkward scattered applause. Chloe stepped off stage quickly and headed toward the employee hallway before he could stop her. Chloe. His voice followed her gently. She froze. Nobody had ever said her name like that before. Like it mattered. She turned slowly. Ethan stood a few feet away with his hands in his pockets. "How did you find me?" she asked quietly. "The lighter," he admitted, pulling the silver lighter from his coat pocket. "You dropped it on the rooftop." Chloe stared at it silently. Her father had given her that lighter years ago before he passed away. She reached for it carefully, but Ethan did not let go immediately. "I am sorry about the media storm," he said softly. "I never wanted this to happen." Chloe finally pulled the lighter free from his hand. "That is easy for you to say," she replied. "You live in a world where attention feels normal." Ethan looked down briefly before meeting her eyes again. "You think I wanted any of this?" Chloe crossed her arms tightly. "I think women line up around the block for a chance to stand next to you." For the first time since entering the club, Ethan smiled faintly. Sad. Genuine. That is exactly the problem. Chloe tried not to react, but something in his expression unsettled her. Because for a split second, he looked less like America's billionaire fantasy and more like the lonely stranger she kissed in the rain. The strangest part was not that Ethan Vale kept showing up at the jazz club. It was that he kept showing up alone. Over the next 2 weeks, Chloe started noticing the pattern. Every Thursday night around 8:15, the front door of Blue Harbor opened quietly, and Ethan walked in wearing simple dark clothes that made him look almost ordinary. No photographers. No bodyguards crowding the sidewalk. No billionaire performance. He always chose the same booth in the back corner beneath the flickering amber light. And every single time Chloe stepped onto the stage to sing, his eyes found her instantly. At first she tried ignoring him. She convinced herself this was just another rich man chasing something temporary because he was bored. Men like Ethan Vale lived in a different universe. They bought islands for vacations and dated women whose faces appeared on magazine covers. Girls like Chloe only existed in their world as passing entertainment. But Ethan kept ruining that theory every time he spoke to her. One rainy Thursday after closing, Chloe stepped outside carrying a trash bag toward the alley dumpster behind the club when she spotted Ethan sitting alone on the curb beside the building. "What are you doing?" she asked cautiously. Ethan looked up from the paper coffee cup in his hands. "Waiting." Chloe frowned. "For what?" "For you to stop avoiding me." Despite herself, she almost smiled. "Almost. You are a billionaire. Do not tell me you have nothing better to do on a Friday night." Ethan glanced toward the glowing Manhattan skyline across the river. "I was at a charity dinner 30 minutes ago." Chloe leaned against the brick wall carefully, and every conversation felt fake. His voice sounded exhausted in a way money could not fix. "Every person there wanted something from me." Chloe crossed her arms. "That must be very difficult for poor billionaire Ethan Vale." He laughed softly under his breath. "You really do not like me very much. I do not know you." The words lingered between them longer than she expected. Ethan stared down at the coffee in his hands before speaking quietly. "That rooftop was the first conversation I have had in years where nobody cared who I was." Chloe's heartbeat shifted slightly. She hated how honest he sounded. Hated that part of her believed him. Rain drizzled lightly onto the empty street while steam rose from nearby subway grates. New York suddenly felt quieter around them. "Why me?" she asked before she could stop herself. Ethan looked at her carefully. "Because you kissed me before you knew my last name." Chloe looked away immediately. The memory still embarrassed her. "That was a mistake." Ethan shook his head once. "No, it was honest." Silence settled again. Then Ethan noticed her fingers trembling slightly from the cold. Without thinking, he removed his coat and held it toward her. Chloe stared at it suspiciously. "What?" he asked. "Do billionaires always carry dramatic movie timing in their pockets?" Ethan smiled for real this time. "Warm." unexpectedly boyish. Only on Thursdays. Chloe laughed before she could help herself. A real laugh. The sound caught both of them off guard. For a second, neither moved. Then Ethan stepped closer carefully, like he did not want to scare the moment away. There it is, he murmured softly. Chloe frowned. What? The girl from the rooftop. Her breath caught unexpectedly. Ethan looked. Different up close tonight. Less untouchable. Less like the face from magazine covers. The city lights reflected softly in his eyes while rain gathered along his dark hair. Chloe suddenly realized something dangerous. She was starting to forget he was Ethan Vale, and that terrified her more than anything. For the next month, Thursday nights quietly became theirs. Chloe never agreed to it out loud. Ethan simply kept appearing at Blue Harbor with the same tired smile and impossible patience, and somehow she stopped telling herself to stay away. Some nights, he sat silently through her entire set with a glass of whiskey untouched in front of him. Other nights, they walked several blocks through Brooklyn afterward, sharing cheap street tacos from a food truck parked beneath the subway tracks. Ethan always insisted the tacos were better than anything served at his charity galas. Chloe accused him of being dramatic. I am serious, he argued one cold night as steam curled into the air around them. At those events, they put tiny flowers on the plates and call it dinner. Chloe laughed softly while wrapping both hands around her paper cup of coffee. Your life sounds exhausting. Ethan glanced at her sideways. It is. The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten unexpectedly. Little by little, Chloe started seeing pieces of the real man hidden beneath the billionaire headlines. Ethan hated photographers. He hated expensive restaurants where people stared at him more than they listened. He secretly loved old jazz records and terrible black and white detective movies. He remembered tiny things she mentioned casually, like her favorite song or the fact that she always skipped breakfast to save money for rent. One Thursday night after closing, Ethan followed Chloe upstairs to the empty apartment above the jazz club where she sometimes practiced music alone after work. The room was tiny, cluttered with handwritten lyrics, thrift store furniture, and old vinyl records stacked near a dusty keyboard. Ethan looked around carefully like the place mattered. This is where you write songs? He asked softly. Chloe nodded, suddenly embarrassed. Most of them are terrible. Ethan noticed a notebook lying open beside the keyboard. Can I? Chloe hesitated before sliding it toward him. Ethan read the lyrics silently while rain tapped against the windows outside. Then his expression changed. You wrote this? Chloe shrugged awkwardly. A long time ago. Ethan looked back down at the page and quietly read one line aloud. Being invisible hurts less than being seen and forgotten. Chloe froze slightly. Nobody had ever repeated her words back to her before. Ethan closed the notebook carefully. That line destroyed me. Chloe looked away fast, pretending to organize sheet music just so he would not notice her face warming. It is not that deep. Yes, Ethan said gently. It is. Silence settled between them while the city lights flickered beyond the rain-streaked glass. Then Ethan stepped closer to the keyboard and ran his fingers lightly along the old chipped wood. You know what everybody sees when they look at me? He asked quietly. Chloe leaned against the table behind her. Money. Ethan smiled sadly. Exactly. His eyes lifted toward hers. Nobody asks if I am lonely. They just assume rich means happy. Chloe studied him carefully. Tonight there was no billionaire charm in his voice. No polished confidence from magazine interviews. Just exhaustion. Human exhaustion. And are you? She asked softly. Ethan held her gaze for a long moment before answering. I do not remember the last time I felt normal. Something inside Chloe shifted painfully at those words because suddenly she understood him in the worst possible way. She knew exactly what it felt like to perform survival every single day while secretly falling apart underneath. The room felt smaller now, warmer somehow. Ethan stepped toward her slowly until only inches separated them. Chloe could hear the rain outside, her own heartbeat. Ethan looked down briefly before meeting her eyes again. You are the only honest thing I have found in years, he admitted quietly. Chloe stopped breathing for half a second. Every instinct told her to step back before this became dangerous. Before she forgot he belonged to a world capable of crushing her. But instead she whispered the one thing she never planned to admit. I think I am starting to forget you are Ethan Vale too. And for the first time in a very long time. Ethan looked genuinely terrified. The problem with falling for someone famous was that eventually the world noticed. It started quietly. A blurry photo online of Ethan leaving Blue Harbor late at night. Then another of Chloe laughing beside him outside a Brooklyn coffee shop. Within days, gossip accounts turned their mystery rooftop girl obsession into something uglier. Headlines spread everywhere. Billionaire bachelor secret romance. Unknown singer captures Ethan Vale. Social climber or soulmate. Chloe tried pretending none of it mattered. She kept singing at the jazz club, kept taking the subway, kept paying overdue bills one paycheck at a time. But New York suddenly looked at her differently. People whispered when she walked by. Strangers stared at her face on trains like they recognized her from somewhere. One afternoon, she entered a grocery store and heard two women near the magazine aisle murmuring under their breath. "That is her." Seriously? She looks so ordinary. Chloe left the store without buying anything. Meanwhile, Ethan's world was becoming equally chaotic. Investors questioned him during meetings. Business reporters asked about Chloe during interviews instead of his company. Even his ex-girlfriend Victoria appeared on television smiling politely while tearing Chloe apart without saying her name directly. "Some people become addicted to attention very quickly," Victoria said during one interview, "especially when they suddenly gain access to a lifestyle they could never reach on their own." Chloe watched the clip alone in her apartment that night and immediately turned the television off before tears could form. Her phone buzzed seconds later. "Ethan." She ignored the call. Then another notification appeared. "Ethan, please let me explain." Chloe threw the phone onto the couch and pressed both hands against her temples. She was exhausted. Exhausted from strangers deciding who she was. Exhausted from pretending Ethan's world did not scare her. Most of all, exhausted because some part of her had started loving the version of Ethan she met beneath the rain on that rooftop. But every day after that proved the same brutal truth. Men like Ethan Vale did not belong to ordinary girls. The next evening, Chloe boarded a crowded subway train after work and stood silently near the doors while advertisements flashed above passengers' heads. Then suddenly she froze. A giant digital billboard outside the train window lit up the dark tunnel wall as the subway slowed. Ethan's face appeared 12 feet tall above the city. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. Billionaire visionary. The entire train glowed blue from the advertisement light. Chloe stared at it helplessly while commuters around her casually looked up from their phones. The distance between their worlds had never felt larger. Her chest tightened painfully. By the time the subway reached the next station, Chloe stepped off quickly just to breathe. Rain misted lightly across the platform while trains roared through the underground tunnel behind her. "I knew I would find you here." Chloe turned sharply. Ethan stood several feet away near the yellow safety line, his dark coat damp from the rain. She blinked in disbelief. "Are you following me now?" Ethan shook his head gently. "Mia told Olivia you left work upset." Chloe laughed bitterly. "Of course. Everybody works for billionaires eventually." Ethan stepped closer carefully. "Chloe." "No." Her voice cracked unexpectedly. "Do you understand what this feels like?" She pointed toward the tunnel entrance where his glowing advertisement still flickered in the distance. "Your face is everywhere. Your name is everywhere. I cannot even buy groceries without people judging me." Ethan's expression darkened instantly with guilt. "I never wanted your life to become collateral damage." Chloe looked at him with tears finally threatening her eyes. "That is the problem, Ethan. You live in a world where damage gets cleaned up with money and publicists." Her voice softened painfully. "But I do not." Ethan looked shattered standing there beneath the harsh subway lights. For once, neither of them knew how to cross the distance growing between them. 3 days passed without Chloe answering a single one of Ethan's calls. She stopped singing at Blue Harbor for the rest of the week and picked up extra shifts at a small diner in Queens where nobody recognized her yet. The exhaustion sat heavy behind her eyes every morning, but staying busy hurt less than thinking about him. Still, no matter how hard she tried, Ethan lingered everywhere. In songs playing from taxi radios. In giant advertisements hanging above Fifth Avenue. In the memory of rain against her skin the night she forgot he was untouchable. On Sunday evening, Chloe finished her diner shift and stepped outside into cold wind swirling through the empty street. Her phone buzzed again. "Ethan." She stared at the screen for several seconds before finally answering with a tired sigh. "What?" Silence filled the line briefly before his voice came softly through the speaker. "Meet me on the rooftop." Chloe closed her eyes instantly. "Ethan, please." Something about the way he said it stopped her from refusing. 40 minutes later, Chloe stepped through the rooftop door of the Manhattan Hotel, where everything had started. The city stretched endlessly beneath dark clouds while cold wind tugged against her coat. Ethan stood alone, near the railing exactly where she first kissed him. No security, no assistance, just him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Chloe crossed her arms tightly. You should not be here. Ethan looked at her carefully. Neither should you. She hated that he still made her want to smile. This is not funny anymore, she whispered instead. My life is turning into a circus because of us. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. I know. Do you? Chloe stepped closer, emotion finally breaking loose after days of trying to stay numb. Because I do not think you understand what it feels like to wake up terrified somebody took another photo of you. Her voice trembled now. I do not think you understand what it feels like when strangers decide your worth because of who you are standing next to. Ethan listened silently while wind whipped across the rooftop around them. People think I am chasing your money. Chloe continued painfully. They think I planned all of this. Ethan's jaw tightened. Anyone who says, that does not know you. Chloe laughed bitterly. Exactly. Nobody knows me. The words hung heavily between them. Ethan stared at her for several seconds before speaking quietly. Do you know how many women have kissed me because of my last name? Chloe froze slightly. Ethan stepped closer slowly. Do you know how many people smile at me while secretly calculating what they can gain from me? His voice cracked faintly beneath the calmness he usually carried so perfectly. Every room I walk into feels fake. Chloe's anger faltered as he continued. But you, Ethan swallowed hard. You kissed me before you knew who I was. The rooftop suddenly felt painfully quiet. Ethan looked at her with an honesty so raw it almost hurt to witness. That moment on this rooftop was the first real thing I have felt in years. Chloe's heartbeat stumbled violently. She wanted to stay angry, wanted to remember the humiliation and fear in headlines. But standing here now, Ethan no longer looked like America's billionaire fantasy. He looked lonely, truly lonely. Ethan moved one step closer until only inches separated them again. I would trade every headline, every interview, every dollar, his voice softened, just to feel normal beside you again. Chloe looked away quickly before he could see tears forming in her eyes. The city lights blurred beneath the rain beginning to fall around them. Then suddenly the rooftop door slammed open behind them. There they are, a voice shouted excitedly. Chloe turned in horror as camera flashes exploded across the rooftop. The flashes came so fast Chloe could barely see. Cameras exploded across the rooftop while reporters shouted questions over one another beneath the rain. Chloe, are you dating Ethan Vale? Did you target him from the beginning? Are wedding rumors true? Panic crashed through her chest instantly. Ethan moved in front of her on instinct, shielding her from the cameras as security rushed onto the rooftop seconds too late. That is enough, Ethan snapped sharply, his calm billionaire mask finally cracking. But the damage was already done. The next morning, every news outlet in America carried the same photos. Ethan standing protectively in front of Chloe beneath the rain. Chloe's frightened expression caught in harsh camera flashes. Social media became brutal overnight. Gold digger trended for hours. Someone leaked Chloe's old apartment address online. Another article mocked her thrift store clothes from before she met Ethan. By afternoon, Blue Harbor's owner sadly told Chloe it would be better if she stayed away for a while because reporters were frightening customers. Chloe nodded silently, even though the words shattered her. By evening, she sat alone inside her apartment, surrounded by darkness except for the glow of her television. Every channel discussed Ethan Vale's mysterious romance. Analysts debated whether the relationship could hurt his company image. One woman on a talk show laughed while saying, "These billionaire men always choose struggling girls because it makes them feel powerful." Chloe muted the television instantly. Tears burned behind her eyes from pure exhaustion. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. She almost ignored it. Almost. What? She whispered tiredly into the phone. Get dressed. Ethan replied calmly. Chloe frowned. I am not in the mood for billionaire surprises tonight. Trust me one last time, he said softly. 30 minutes later, a black car stopped outside her building. Chloe reluctantly climbed inside wearing simple black jeans and a coat, too emotionally drained to argue anymore. Ethan sat beside her in silence while Manhattan lights blurred past rain-streaked windows. Where are we going? She asked quietly. Ethan only looked at her. Somewhere honest. 20 minutes later, the car pulled up outside the Vail Foundation Grand Hall, where New York's biggest annual charity gala was already underway. Chloe immediately stiffened. Absolutely not. Ethan stepped out first and held his hand toward her. Please. The ballroom inside looked exactly like the world Chloe hated. Crystal chandeliers. Designer gowns. Cameras flashing every few seconds. Conversations dripping with money and status. The moment Ethan and Chloe entered together, whispers spread through the room like fire. Chloe felt every stare hit her skin. Then suddenly Ethan guided her directly toward the main stage. Ethan, she whispered nervously. What are you doing? He squeezed her hand gently. Fixing this. Seconds later, Ethan stepped onto the stage beneath enormous golden lights while hundreds of wealthy guests fell silent. Chloe froze near the stairs as cameras turned toward him again. Ethan adjusted the microphone slowly, scanning the ballroom full of executives, celebrities, and reporters. Then he spoke. For the past month, the media has been obsessed with one question. His voice echoed powerfully through the room. Why would Ethan Vail choose a woman like Chloe Bennett? The ballroom grew painfully quiet. Ethan looked directly toward Chloe, standing in the crowd. But nobody asked the more important question. He paused. Why would Chloe Bennett choose me? Murmurs spread instantly through the audience. Ethan's expression hardened slightly as he continued. All of you wanted the billionaire. The headlines. The image. The fortune. Then his eyes softened when they found Chloe again. She was the only person who cared about the man standing alone on a rooftop in the rain. Complete silence swallowed the ballroom. Some guests looked embarrassed now, others stunned. Ethan stepped down from the stage slowly and walked straight toward Chloe while cameras flashed around them like lightning. Then in front of the entire elite world that once mocked her, Ethan Vail stopped inches away from her and quietly said, I am done letting them make you feel small. The ballroom remained silent long after Ethan finished speaking. For the first time since this nightmare began, Chloe did not feel small standing in front of wealthy strangers judging her with expensive smiles. She felt seen, truly seen. Ethan stood only inches away now while cameras flashed endlessly around them. But somehow the noise no longer mattered the same way it used to. Chloe looked up at him carefully. You did not have to do this, she whispered. Ethan's expression softened immediately. Yes, he replied quietly. I did. Something inside Chloe finally broke loose then. Not fear. Not humiliation. Relief. Weeks of pressure, headlines, whispers, and loneliness suddenly felt lighter. Standing beneath the ballroom lights beside the one man who understood exactly what it meant to live inside a world constantly watching, Ethan slowly offered his hand to her in front of everyone. Not like a billionaire making a statement, like a man asking someone to trust him. Chloe stared at his hand for a moment before finally taking it. The ballroom erupted almost instantly. Some guests applauded awkwardly. Others looked stunned. Reporters shouted questions again, while cameras flashed brighter than before, but Ethan ignored every single one of them. His attention never left Chloe. Later that night, after the gala finally ended and Manhattan settled into midnight silence, Ethan drove Chloe back to the hotel rooftop where everything had started. The rain had stopped hours ago, leaving the city glowing beneath silver clouds and distant traffic lights. Chloe stepped toward the railing slowly while cold wind brushed through her hair. Funny, she murmured softly. The first time I stood up here, I thought rich people were the loneliest people on earth. Ethan walked beside her with his hands in his coat pockets. And now, Chloe glanced sideways at him. Now I think maybe lonely people just find each other. Ethan smiled quietly at that. For a while they simply stood there together, overlooking the endless city below. No cameras, no headlines. No ballroom full of strangers deciding who they should be. Just Chloe and Ethan. The girl who felt invisible. The man everybody saw, but nobody truly knew. Ethan finally reached into his pocket and pulled out the small silver lighter Chloe had dropped the night they met. I was going to give this back weeks ago, he admitted. Chloe laughed softly. You kept stealing reasons to see me. Absolutely. She shook her head, smiling for the first time in days. Ethan turned the lighter over carefully in his hand before looking at her again. You know what scares me most? Chloe raised an eyebrow. What? Ethan exhaled slowly. That one day you will wake up and realize your life was easier before me. Chloe's smile faded gently as she stepped closer. Ethan, he looked down briefly. vulnerable now in a way the world would never believe possible from someone like him. I spent years surrounded by people who wanted pieces of me, he confessed quietly. Money, status, access. His eyes lifted toward hers again. You are the first person who ever made me feel enough without any of that. Chloe felt her chest tighten painfully. She reached up and lightly adjusted the collar of his coat against the wind. And you are the first person who ever made me feel visible without trying to change me. Ethan looked at her like the words meant everything. Maybe they did. The city shimmered quietly around them, while distant thunder rolled somewhere far beyond Manhattan. Then Ethan smiled softly and asked the question that brought them back to the very beginning. So tell me honestly, if you met me tonight for the first time, standing alone on this rooftop, knowing exactly who I am now. He stepped closer until only inches separated them again. Would you still kiss me? Chloe looked at him for one long heartbeat before smiling through tears, threatening her eyes. This time, she whispered softly, I would kiss you even sooner. And beneath the glowing New York skyline, the billionaire everybody wanted finally kissed the only woman who ever saw the man before the fortune.